Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode. This is a very special one. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the terrorism problem in Xinjiang. It's something that people haven't really learned too much about, at least in an in-depth way, and the interesting ways that it ties into existing propaganda that goes across the board in other countries that these particular terrorist groups have used. And I have a very special guest with me today. I've always wanted to bring a Muslim on who had a different kind of a view of China than the mainstream media, because especially after I made my video about the vocational training center, I had quite a few Muslims reach out to me, Muslim followers, saying that even the few criticisms that I put in there are kind of misplaced without understanding the full issue and understanding exactly what China was fighting. And I think that probably comes from the position of having grown up in a privileged country that doesn't have these kinds of issues to deal with in any sort of a significant way. So today, not only do I have somebody, a Muslim on to explain a little bit about what's going on, but I have somebody who was a former Salafist jihadist connected with Al-Qaeda, and has a very deep understanding of exactly what's going on and kind of sees through everything that's unfolding in front of our eyes. And some of it's very concerning. There's some new things that are happening as well that are worth keeping an eye on and being aware of. So my guest will have his identity protected. Fouda is the name that we're going with. I hope I pronounced that correctly. That is not actually his image. Before we get into it, Fouda, maybe you can explain a little bit about whose image are you using here and whose name are you using here as you're protecting your identity?
Yeah, Fouda. He's like a writer. He's a secularist. He was like anti-caliphate and religious or a state-based or religion before Islamic State. He actually talked about the danger that could be happening, the horror that could happen later. It was like in 80s, 90s, and actually then there was like a jihadist groups in Egypt that made fatwa to attack him, and they killed him. That's why I choose his picture. He
Yeah, that's
made a
actually a
lot
pretty
of great books.
Yeah. Okay. That's actually a pretty appropriate image to use then, considering what we're going to be discussing. So let's just jump right into it. We've been speaking for a while, but the beginning part is something that we've never spoke about. I'm really interested to find out a little bit about how you got involved with Al Qaeda. You know, a little bit about your background. You can say too. Obviously, sharing only the bits you're comfortable to while protecting your identity, where you're from, and what it was that drove you to associate them to begin with.
Yeah, the thing about Al Qaeda, and it's really important to tell you about when I was affected by Al Qaeda and ideology and Salafism, Jihadism. It was like about decade ago, not recently, not after Al Qaeda and ISIS happened and after they took land. It was really different then. Like they didn't see the land, so you can join them. They how they worked then is to concentrate on individuals, to give them training, to make them capable of doing individual act to attack single target, whether it's a country, a group, or something. Like if a country is attacking Al Qaeda or attacked one of their commanders in Afghanistan, they want some people in such country to hit them back. That's how they worked for 2011. About how I contacted them. What really affected me the most, it wasn't like I contacted the Al Qaeda directly. It was Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera then was promoting Al Qaeda, and everyone know it in Middle East. They were promoting them. They made interviews, many interviews with Osama bin Laden. Also, they showed them like religious Muslim, devoted Muslims. It's there is even a video of them saying that people became religious when they joined Al Qaeda. So they are they made Osama bin Laden. They even made a documentary about Osama bin Laden, make him look like a holy man. That and they even promoted their websites, so make people go and see how they think. Also, what the first websites that I logged in and signed up into, like these sites doesn't exist anymore. Like the Muhajirun network, الحزبة, الفردوس, شموخ الإسلام, أنصار المجاهدين, الفلوجة, and there are many other sites. Like I signed up in many sites of this and contacted even them. Like even there was a website well known then. It was the website of Muhajirun. This website I remember when it went down, I was the one to recommend them which it was Nasheed. They bought Nasheed instead of the website. I remember it. It was called Muhajirun Wansar. I recommend if
It, it,
anyone, if any of
yeah.
them, if any jihadist remember this website and was a member of it, will remember which Nasheed was playing on that site.
Is there any risk of I don't know if you want me to cut this out, because is there any risk of your identity being revealed if people know that you were the one who recommended the new site?
They didn't. They always asked us to hide our
Oh,
identity.
so they don't know who you are anyways. Okay. All right, good. I just wanted to make sure for your safety purposes. So they were kind of like bulletin boards and stuff like that. So if I understood correctly, is the appeal, is the way that they got to you, that they convinced you that this is really what you should do as a Muslim, to be a true Muslim, and kind of uh, romanticized the idea of joining these groups and made it seem like this great thing to do. Is that a correct understanding? Kind of like a brainwashing of some sort.
At first, like you have to think about what happened then. It was mainly Iraq War, and I have to tell you how like Arabs and most Arabs, not only extremists, felt when United States invaded Iraq. Like first of all, there wasn't weapons of mass destruction, of course. The people who were watching like the Iraqi army being completely destroyed, the country, even the museum of Iraq being looted by US soldiers.
No.
The thing about like destroying whole streets and homes by a hunch, like thinking like Saddam, we had like some information that Saddam maybe are in this house, so we destroyed the whole street and they killed tens of people. But we found out that it was false. Like it was like a collective punishment. This like people, like especially Arabs and Muslims, not just Iraqis, like we felt humiliated and insulted. The
Yeah.
thing happened after and how like media handled it. It was about a video. It was like a 2 minutes video. It was a shocking video. The video then I still remember it till today. It was such a video will create ISIS.
Mm.
It was a video of Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi, who was a leader of Al-Qaeda in Iraq. He was like standing with a couple of people, of course masked, but they have like what is called a scarf or something, like represent different like different nationalities, and in front of them American, a civilian American, dressed in red like the prisoner of Guantanamo. He started the video with saying that Islam is being slaughtered, Muslims are like Muslim is being killed and such, and then he went and yeah killed the hostage. It was like yeah, it was people then was were said no, it's not Islamic, it's not something Islam would like permit. But the thing is, they like when they have argument, they made people think this act is a reaction of what happened in Abu Ghraib or in Guantanamo. They when they have argument, this the part of being this is Islamic or not is like can be discussed later. But people were angry, and Al Qaeda like exploited that, exploited such accident to like promote itself. Not just Al Qaeda. There are articles from this years about even Bush administration and the United States promoted such video to show that they are fighting terrible people and we have to continue the war. So they promoted Al Qaeda. It's even there is an article in Washington Post. Can you hear me?
Sorry about that. Yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry, my connection just dropped off. So I got to the point where you said even Bush was promoting recent videos. I got to that point. If you want to continue from there.
Yeah, he was promoting the video of Al Qaeda to make them we are fighting the bad guys. We have to stay in Iraq. It's a just war. After that, was the time I was introduced to them and introduced to their ideology. After that, I knew it was planned. That it's not a coincidence that they made the 2 minute video like very precisely how to manipulate people to make people join them and how they always make like say we are being slaughtered, so we'll do horrible thing, so you think the horrible thing is okay. Another thing, I think I read that like the hostage was imprisoned by Al Qaeda. It was called Nicholas Berg. Nicholas Berg was arrested by the U.S. Army. He was arrested by U.S. Army. He tried to flee Iraq, was caught at the airport, and somehow he ended up with Al Qaeda. It's very weird accident.
Yeah, so it sounds like there was an event, obviously the invasion of Iraq, that could be capitalized on to encourage recruitment. I think you were telling me before, but even within Iraq, you were talking about creating a secular kind of violence between two groups in order to excuse actual genocides and in order to recruit people. That was a little bit of a different dynamic, right? Do you want to speak about that a little bit? Was that also, well, that would have been after the invasion as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, about starting a sectarian war, about Sunni and Shia.
Right. Yeah, because there's a bunch of different elements that go into recruitment. So there's events that can be capitalized on. I suppose there's before the Iraq War, there's the just based on ideology alone, recruiting people just because they think that this is the way you're supposed to do things, kind of in this Salafist movement. But then within Iraq, they were creating divides between groups as well in order to recruit. If I remember correctly, our previous conversations.
Yeah, it like can I I will tell you this, like the city that became like a stronghold of Al Qaeda and the ISIS later, like the majority of them were Sufis. They weren't Salafists, they weren't Salafist jihadists. Most of them were Sufis. Like the people who would be killed today by ISIS, it was the city of Fallujah. Like everything changed. There are many elements like not just they worked on many things, like attacking Shia, like Zarqawi made the war instead of attacking the invasions or attacking United States and the US Army who occupied Iraq, to make it a fight between Shia and Sunnis. He wanted this because his ideology is like very extreme. People or normal people in Iraq wouldn't like to adopt such ideology. They at first, most of them refused that. Most of them like tended to be secular, not sectarian. But he made his attacks to target Shia, like bombs and many ways to target Shia, and capitalize also about reaction of Shia against Sunnis. Of course, this will like, even if Shia in their reaction just target Al Qaeda or targeted Al Qaeda, he will also say it's attack against Sunnis, it's not attack against Al Qaeda,
Mm.
and make it about Sunni and Shia. And even, of course, there will be mistakes and there will be a crime as a reaction from Shia against Sunnis, and they exploited them. They are professional in using that. Like in the West, for example, when terrorist groups like attack some civilians in the West, it's they want Islamophobia. They want
Mm.
people. They want attacks against Muslims. So many Muslims tend toward them to make it's a fight between like non-Muslims in the West and the fight between Muslims. They want that. They want to like burn things up, to get more people, to get more people to have a violent reaction towards non-Muslims. That's
You
their
know,
idea.
you know what's interesting about that is that it makes me think. You saw firsthand some of my interactions with those groups in the UK and England, including that guy who wanted to incite the Pakistani army to, fight against China. Um, I had quite a few people reach out to me, quite a few Muslims, saying that I need to be careful because even though I'm attacking that guy directly, what his goal is he wants to paint you as an Islamophobe in order to gain allies against you. Um, and so it seems like they're drawing directly from that playbook. And actually, when he backed out, this is a guy who wanted to write an article about me, and he was going to debate it, but then he changed it to something else. And he said in his videos, he's saying this is to his audience. He said, "This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask him a question that will force him to look like an Islamophobe." So it seems like they really, really rely on this aspect. If you attack their specific extremism or their extreme views, they paint you as an Islamophobe to build a war against you or to build a war against something in particular. So it seems like a playbook, isn't it, that is used over and over again.
Yeah, they were. I remember I was reading this. I feel it's stupid now, but in their books and their videos and lectures, they were saying Shia are Jews in disguise. يعني, I
The
mean,
same guys who were talking to me, the
no,
same guys there.
I mean, not him. I'm talking about jihadists.
Okay.
They try to do this. They are enemies of Muslims. They just hide their hatred towards Muslims and they claim that they are Muslims. That's how they demonize their enemy. They want their enemy to look like you can't trust them. They are the enemies of Islam. You can't talk to them. You can't take their words for granted. Like that's how they did with Shia. Like even if Shia said we are your brothers, we are we can get along, they will just demonize them as Jews who are in disguise to trick Muslims, hide their hatred towards Muslims. like
You know, yeah, that actually, there's so many parallels I'm drawing with the Xinjiang as well, because these guys, when they were talking about it, this was a guy from Pakistan who was born in England, and when he was talking about me, he was saying Daniel is in our East Turkestan. I mean, this guy's not Uyghur. He's got nothing to do with Xinjiang. He's never been there in his life. So obviously, this is about religion. This is a religious thing. And so it seems like if China took actions against specific actions of extremism or separatism or things like that, the goal is to morph that into a war against Islam. And we're going to get into a few different things later on in this talk where I see evidence of that happening, and even mainstream media helping to prop that up. But to wrap up the first part of our conversation, I just want to find out a little bit about, to finish your story, if you were still involved with Al Qaeda, where were you supposed to go? Where were you supposed to be deployed to? And then finally, how did you decide to leave? What was it that pushed you to leave and kind of escape it?
I think if I stayed with them, I would go probably to Libya,
Mm,
because they were. It was like I think they were preparing for that. Like
during that time.
yeah, like were tens of thousands of Egyptians who traveled to Libya and Syria. I think they didn't. By the way, when they know that some people in Egypt support Al Qaeda, they didn't want most people to go to Iraq. They say they were saying, no, just stay where you are. Like they
Do you know?
want
Do you know
you.
why?
Well, there is a video. I remember there a video of Bin Laden who was saying, if don't get bored from training. If you are trained and know something, know it again, train again. They're just like they were preparing for something. They just doing
Oh,
it to recruit people.
kind of
Uh,
get people in reserve, get ready for the next thing, to have somebody to deploy to the next target.
yeah, and I think it was the target about Egyptians. Then it was to go to Libya,
Right.
and the first battle even was on the borders of Egypt. Uh, I don't
Okay.
know. It's suspicious, to be honest.
And how did you end up leaving? Like, what was it that you just finally decided? Okay, this isn't for you.
Yeah, it's a long story. I was a teenager. Like I read their books and I liked reading, but I also read other books from different ideology. I read even old books that made me realize things aren't the same as it is now.
Yeah, sorry about that. My connection kept cutting out
Like
there.
Islam isn't like they bought Islam in their own image.
And that was one of the problems that Xinjiang was facing also, that there was a strict interpretation of Islam by a small group of people. Because, actually, Uyghur culture as well, I'll give you an example, has, 1,000 years of history, of 1,000+ years of winemaking and drinking. And this was something that some of the groups wanted to completely get rid of. They said, no, no, no, you're a Muslim. You shouldn't be doing this. This is completely against what you're supposed to be doing. The problem is, it's a lot of Uyghurs, they culturally identify with a lot of the same practices of Islam, but they don't necessarily follow it strictly. And they wanted to change it into this strict in interpretation about what's wrong and what's right. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add on to that before we move into the topic of ETIM specifically.
Yeah, about drinking. There some schools in Islam that saying some drinks that would be okay in small quantities that won't make you like drunk. And
Mm.
about that, it's not like in the historical records, during the Caliphate, and whether it's Abbasid, I think in English, or Amawites, or even the companions of the Prophet. Some of them drink, some were drinking. Like, yeah, it's a sin. Drinking is a sin, but people commit sins. Like it's
Right. Yeah.
not like people all the problem. Like the most important thing, and I think it's also written and in all the books is about the lying. The lying is like it's the worst thing. Like there is not just lying to deceive people, even by truth, even if you said something that technically is right, isn't a lie, but you are saying it to deceive people.
Okay.
Even that was horrible, like the first in the early ages or early stage of Islam. That's the most important thing. Like a companion of the prophet, like some of them can drink, but lying is the worst sin that they could do. That's how Islam reached us. If we said that the companions of the prophet were lying or liars, that mean all Islam, everything that reached us from Islam is in doubt. We can't trust it. It can be fabricated. That was the most important thing that they cared about.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah. No. So it seems like there's a lot of room to interpret many different things in different ways, which it seems like some specific groups are taking advantage of. But now I want to talk about ETIM in specific. You know quite a bit about them, also. Um, can you explain a little bit, because you were talking to me about how they're pretty much I don't know if you use these exact words, but they're pretty much the same thing as Al Qaeda. Do you want to explain a little bit about who ETIM is and how they fit into the whole kind of ecosystem of terrorism?
Should I talk about their leaders first, or
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's the movement, the one who started the movement of ETIM, or as we knew it, it was الحزب الإسلامي التركستاني, or Turkestan Islamic Party, TIP. The one who started it was Abu Muhammad al-Turkestani. Okay, this one, like he fought the Pakistani army, and even and he was killed like in 2003, I think. And he died like during like a raid of the Pakistani army against Al Qaeda headquarters.
Oh, so he was there at the Al Qaeda headquarters.
Yeah, which is like very weird, maybe a coincidence,
Right.
right?
No, probably not.
Yeah.
But their ideologies are aligned. I mean, did you have any? I don't know if it was too early back then, but when you were involved with Al Qaeda, did you have any connections or knowledge about ETIM during that time? Like, were there a lot of was there a lot of overlap or anything to that effect?
Yeah, about contacting them, they were making videos, like such videos still exist today. I can, if you want, I can send it to you. Like the videos were called like fast mail for mujahideen. The such It was like a series of videos. Such videos, it was about like military stuff, you know. It was like how to use gun, how to make dangerous things, but it wasn't in Arabic. So when I want to know how to make you know,
Right. Yeah.
I go ask them.
Okay.
I
They had the expertise for that.
Yeah, it was very easy. It's in its name. It was fast mail, like fast email or something. In Arabic البريد السريع. It's about using the easiest way to make dangerous things. That's
Right.
how I know them. That's how like contacted them. How I asked them how you made this, how you made that, what. was exactly the materials you are using in such videos. That's how we were contacting them. As they like uploaded their videos or their propaganda videos, there was then uh, an app or application. It was before Telegram and WhatsApp and the other apps. It was called Asrar al-Mujahideen or Mujahideen Secrets. This one, it was private application for Al Qaeda members. They would never manage to upload such videos, such propaganda videos, without being a members of Al Qaeda. And not only that, there are many videos of them, like they are saying that they joined, like they joined the global jihad. There is another thing I want to explain about Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda originally wasn't named Al Qaeda. It was what it was called. It was Global Front to launch jihad against Crusaders and Jews. So it was under the leadership of Osama bin Laden, of course. So
Okay.
ETIM joined such group. It was known like in media as Al Qaeda, but it wasn't their original name. That's not the name they choose. Even it was like a coalition of multiple groups. But media took Al Qaeda that became it's easier. It's easier to say Al Qaeda, and they became known as that. Like in their video when they celebrated 9/11, they were saying how every like Islam became two parties: the party who joined like Al Qaeda or Salafism Jihadism, and the party who joined United States. That's how they declare that they join Al Qaeda. Not only that, even in their first videos, they were called Al Qaeda in China,
Okay. Oh, right,
and
right, right.
and and in the first video they put the instructions of Abu Mus'ab al-Suri, who is like Abu Mus'ab al-Suri is more important in Al Qaeda, like more than Osama bin Laden. He's the one who put the strategy. He's the one putting the ideology of
Is that
facing.
this guy?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Till
Right.
today, like in their videos, they use now. I think nowadays they translate his ideology into Uyghurs in the Uyghur language to teach
Oh.
people. Yeah, in their
So
website.
he was pretty much he was the strategist who created all of these kinds of strategies for fighting a jihad and all these kinds of things that is kind of the playbook that's still used today.
Yeah, he's very important. He's way important than Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden was like he's like a media figure, not.
Oh, like the spokesperson.
Yeah, and like because his history, like he's a rich man who left his life, left everything, and joined jihad. That how you use it or use him to attract people. But if Osama bin Laden died in the first day, it wouldn't really matter. That's why Al
Right.
Qaeda like went on after his death. He wasn't that important. Maybe for the funding, maybe if, like funding
Funding and stuff. Yeah.
the movement. His He was really important in that. But other than being like a media figure, like even in religious stuff, no one will go read Osama bin Laden materials and think he's reading religious stuff or a religious ideology for Qaeda. He wasn't that important, to be honest. There were like the most two important figures was Abu Mus'ab al-Suri, the one you showed his picture, and the other one is Saif al-Adl. By the way, Saif al-Adl was the leader of Al-Qaeda in Waziristan. When this man went to Syria to start like a front in Syria, the one who took his place as a leader of Al Qaeda was, I think, Abdushakur Turkestani, who was the leader of ETIM and became the leader of
Oh,
Al Qaeda at the same time. It's so
okay. Well, yeah, that's more connections there. I mean, it's there's definitely, so to answer that question, there's definitely a lot of overlap. Now, how does it work though in Syria? Speaking of Syria, so you've got over 10,000, some people say 50,000 Uyghur fighters there fighting with, under the ETIM or TIP banner, whatever it is. How does their relationship work with Al Qaeda versus ISIS? Because they're showing up in a lot of ISIS training videos. I mean, are they all kind of grouped together, or ISIS and Al Qaeda are two very different? They have two very different relationships with them.
yeah. I have to talk about how ISIS became ISIS and how there was a conflict between ISIS and Al Qaeda. First of all, when Al Qaeda in Iraq started, was under the leadership of Zarqawi, Abu Musab Zarqawi, and they became the first target of United States because Al Qaeda at that time, they mainly made attacks in the West and such. So it was really important for them to attack Al Qaeda everywhere. After that, they suggested that rebrand themselves. We knew they are Al Qaeda, but they took another name, to like to not be called Al Qaeda, because Al Qaeda was more radical and have bad reputation than Islamic State. They call themselves Majlis Shura al-Mujahideen. They still became a target of United States. Then they changed their name, rebranded themselves to be Islamic State in Iraq, ISI. They are Al Qaeda, and everyone knew they are Al Qaeda. They just wanted to put themselves away from Al Qaeda, like they are like saying, "We have nothing to do of attacks against Western countries. Don't attack us. Don't target us." That's how they were thinking. Even Al
Right.
Qaeda then said have nothing to do with us. Just leave them alone. By the way, United States reacted towards such steps. Like the more they moved away from Al Qaeda, the more freedom they got. Their leaders get to live longer. They let their leaders live longer. The last one is the last leader of ISIS. He lived way longer than people who were before him, for a reason. The one before him made Al Qaeda leader. He said Al Qaeda is part of us, and they make Al Qaeda leader the second in command. Abu Bakr al Baghdadi, the last one of ISIS, he said we have nothing to do with Al Qaeda. Like officially, we are saying we have nothing to do with Al Qaeda, but we know they are Al Qaeda. So they are the same. Like your non ISIS is exactly like Al Qaeda. Not only that, they always rebrand themselves. When ISIS want to start like a new front in Syria, they made another group, rebranded the group under the name of Jabhat al-Nusra or Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda, what became known as Al Qaeda in Syria. Okay, so it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Before
Right.
the split or it was just an internal fight.
Well, I
Even
guess. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
even the people who established the camp of ETIM in Syria, half of them joined Al Qaeda or the main organization of Al Qaeda, and the other one joined the ISIS, became, I think, the commander or uh, the governor of Aleppo, I think. Like
Right.
the people who established the camp of ETIM. Also, ETIM, half of them joined the ISIS, became loyal to ISIS, and the other stayed loyal to Al Qaeda.
Right. So that's where the overlap comes, because they're showing up in a lot of different ISIS videos and training camps, right? So let me, maybe this is a good time to play one of those videos. There's a video of ISIS actually praising ETIM. And it's important for everybody to know who maybe doesn't have the backstory. The U.S. Delisted ETIM as a terrorist organization. And it's interesting you talk about, when you're under the ISIS banner, you get to live longer, before you get killed in an airstrike or something like that, whatever it is. Because of course we've seen, we've heard, and I didn't prepare that video, leaked audio from American officials saying that when ISIS was advancing in Syria, they deliberately sat back because they thought that they would pose a bigger threat to Assad and they would help destabilize his government. And so by delisting ETIM, I feel like ETIM is going to be one of those groups you could join and have a long lifespan as well, because it seems like they're going to be very useful for the U.S., especially because their primary target is going to be China afterwards, a region that they are looking to take over and turn into an Islamic state. But how about what do you think? How about I play the video where you shared with me that ISIS was praising ETIM? Do you think that's a good fit for here?
Yeah.
Okay, let's play it. Let's play that one.
بسط سيطرتها ونفوذها هناك حتى قيض الله لها عصابة مؤمنة من الموحدين الصادقين فحملوا السلاح عليهم وأذاقوهم سنوف العذاب وأعادوا ترتيب صفوف المجاهدين هناك وبدأت شوكتهم في الظهور بفضل الله وحده وكان على رأس هؤلاء الأبطال القائد الفذ حسن مخدوم رحمه الله تعالى فكان من الذين غرسوا نواة الجهاد في قلوب أهل تركستان وأصل فيهم معنى الولاء والبراء والعقيدة الصافية السليمة الخالية من أدناس القومية والديمقراطية الكافرة وقد هاجر إلى إمارة أفغانستان قبل احتلالها وبقي فيها مناصرا لها حتى استشهد عام 2003 على الحدود مع باكستان في اشتباك مع الجيش الباكستاني المرتد واستمر الجهاد بفضل الله قائما على أشده إلى يومنا هذا هدفه تحرير الأرض وتحكيم شرع الله فيها إن شاء الله.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that video?
Yeah, it shows clearly that there weren't any different from ISIS weren't different from Al Qaeda, and the ETIM they were among friends. By the way, ISIS don't praise anyone. They don't praise someone who is very different. Even then, even when they were part of Al Qaeda, they would never for example praise Hamas. Hamas when I was in such groups, and they made us study a book was written by Abu Nur al-Maqdisi. He was a jihadist in Gaza, in Palestine. This man, he wanted to start his own Islamic State or enforce Sharia in the areas that he controls. Hamas attacked him and attacked the mosque and fought them, and he was killed in the fight. And he and his group and the rest were imprisoned. That's why ISIS or Islamic State, they don't like Hamas. They don't praise Hamas. They wouldn't say Hamas are good people. They think Hamas have a different ideology. They think Hamas are their enemy. They think Hamas aren't Muslims.
That's and is the primary reason because they're not following kind of the Salafist kind of model, or not imposing Sharia law, or what exactly is the reason?
Because they don't enforce Sharia. That's the main goal.
Okay, this actually explains quite a lot, because those guys who contacted me, who kind of targeted me on Twitter from the UK. When I go through their history, they say that they stand with, the Palestinians and all this kind of stuff. But when you actually look at the language they use for Xinjiang versus for what's going on in Israel and Palestine, they say that we need to invade, Xinjiang. We need to find a way to, take over it and things like that. But with Palestine, it's more passive. It's like, okay, we'll pray for them. you know. So it seems like they're on the surface, they're saying, of course we stand with them, they're Muslims, but actually they don't actually really want to do anything for them, which I found bizarre. And maybe what you explained now kind of sheds some light on that.
Yeah, these groups they use, and I'm talking about Salafist jihadist groups. They always use Palestine as like a cover. Yeah, we support Palestine and such, and they attack people who help Palestine. They always do that, and they're like a reasonable justification. I'm not saying like when I was with them, I was anti-Palestine or something, but it's complicated. I know how this happened, and how I know how they became like that.
Right, yeah. Now, in this kind of battle for Xinjiang, this propaganda against Xinjiang, one of the things I noticed is that a lot of the propaganda they're using against Xinjiang is propaganda they used in other areas of the world as well. I mean, you were talking about they were trying to split off a part of Egypt also and kind of rule it with Sharia law in a similar kind of a way, a similar thing that they want to accomplish in Xinjiang, although sometimes they don't really admit it directly. But during that, first of all, what was that area of Egypt? They were trying to split off a specific area of Egypt.
Yeah, in modern history, it's Sinai, but I think they tried to do it before, like in Upper Egypt and other area. But now they are exactly targeting Sinai, and they are recruiting people, sending people, and make the battle for them there. There is a faction of ISIS. They say we started Islamic State and they will enforce Sharia in Sinai, and also saying the Egyptian army is enemies of Islam, and the Egyptian president is enemy of Islam, and he's targeting Islam, and he's killing Muslims, and I mean he's a Muslim, but they want such idea that there is a conspiracy. He's just showing, he's like pretending to be Muslim, but he's in a conspiracy against Islam and such, to recruit people. Like it happened everywhere. They always use such claims, like everywhere, not just in Egypt. It's like a blueprint.
Yeah, but the thing that was interesting for me was the specific pieces of propaganda that they were using. So, for example, I think they were using the destruction of mosques as well. So that's a really big push that's going on now in the West with these kind of agencies that are creating anti-China propaganda. They're saying that all these mosques are being destroyed. They don't really show any evidence of it, but in Egypt and all these other places, you showed me multiple videos on YouTube where mosques were being torn down, either to be rebuilt or actually, do you want to tell me what's the context for those videos when some of the mosques are being taken down in Egypt or those other areas where the videos you shared me? What exactly is going on there, first of all, before we talk about the propaganda piece?
Yeah, sometimes mosques like demolished for like make project like a bridge or something. Sometimes it being demolished and to be build a better one. There are many reasons for that.
Building
Sometimes,
code issue or something?
yeah, sometimes they don't have a license or something. What could be like controversial, like to demolish a mosque that have historical importance, or have like remains of righteous man or something that isn't like any other mosque. It's different in that case, and this could like make some people angry, but it's like it's happening everywhere for different reasons.
So more important to my point, what I'm saying is that that is used as an opportunity as propaganda for these Salafist groups to say, look what's happening. This is why we need to come in and take over. That's one aspect of their propaganda, if I understood correctly.
Yeah, it's really important. They can't say that we will do that to enforce Sharia and force people to do this and dress like that and do. No, what they want to do, have they want to relate to the common man. It's like a media strategy, like even
Right.
in their propaganda, Al Qaeda propaganda, when they use people to make them do some suicide attacks and something, they don't use some people who would look different from the common man. They want someone.
When you say common man, you're talking about the common typical Muslim. They want them to look like, maybe you can clarify.
Yeah, they want, like, if you have 1% of Muslim dress in a way and act in a way and they look in a certain way. No, they don't target these people. They don't target the minority. They want to recruit the majority or to recruit some of the majority to reach a wide audience.
Okay, I
That's
see.
why they don't just use someone like in 9/11. The 19 people who made it, they will target certain countries and certain people, like about Saudi Arabia, that the most of them were Saudis. It doesn't mean, by the way, that Saudis did it. They wanted to recruit a lot of Saudis. They used the people who worked in Saudi Arabia, had relation with Saudi Arabia, and were in tribes in Saudi Arabia, and people that Saudis will see and can relate to them, to make people think these people look like me. They don't look different. Same thing with the leader of the group was Egyptian. He doesn't for example, he doesn't have very long beard or something, talking very normally, have high education from middle family, not rich, not poor. The rich,
Basically, people they
these
can
people.
identify with. Yeah, yeah. And then, so continuing in the propaganda discussion, the other thing they do is they talk about rapes. That's a common thing that they were using in these other areas that they want to take over as well, saying that they were being raped. The Muslim women were being raped. That was something that was used in Egypt as well. Correct?
Yeah, it was used in Egypt, but the most important one is the one about sterilization.
Same thing they're using in Xinjiang. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like the claim was made, was the deputy of Minister of Awqaf, which is the religious ministry in Egypt. He claimed that there is a report about the church and the leader of the church, the Pope of the Egyptian church. He made a conspiracy to make Christians as the majority of the Egyptian people, and make Muslims like the minority, and they will use that by making Christians be doctors and work on like decreasing the population of Muslims. Uh,
So so that is actually really interesting because that's identical to the propaganda they're using in Xinjiang, saying that the population is deliberately being diluted, they're being sterilized, and all of this kind of stuff. Or, well, they're saying removable IUDs, but it's pretty much the same stories recycled.
yeah, they know exactly what they are doing. They are
It's
using
a
the same
playbook.
thing. Yeah, word by word.
S- Now the difference here is that there's an incentive for the West to prop this up because I don't think they really cared what was going on internally in Egypt, although there was some interference, of course. But in China, this is the big geopolitical battle. So now everybody in the West, they don't see that these are recycled stories from Salafist groups. This is because this is the first time when the Western media is really pushing it up because it helps in this propaganda war against China. But when you see these stories, it just must click for you. You must be like, this is so obvious. They're reusing the same stories.
Not only that, there were also claims that Christians put Muslim women in prison inside the church and torture them to make them Christian, like they force them to leave Islam and such. It's, I know, like anyone who have functional brain will know that it's fabrication. But the thing about Egypt, such claims had like a horrible effect on Christian community in Egypt. Like every church in Egypt have like cops guarding it to protect it from like anger attack or something. Also, like in some, I think University of Cairo, there is Christian doctors can't join the be professor in things when it comes to pregnancy. I don't know exactly how it's
Obstetrics
called.
and yeah. So anything related to that's really interesting. So I mean, the propaganda really works well. You know what I want to do is I want to draw some parallels now because obviously I didn't prepare anything about the sterilization reports, but there's really shoddy work being promoted by specific groups saying that, oh yeah, Uyghur women are being sterilized. They tried to use Muslim, the word Muslim as much as possible. And I can't help but think when the Western media and these Western think tanks do this, they know exactly what they're doing. They're actually playing into the rally call for ETIM and these Salafist groups to get people together, to rally them together to fight against China. I mean, we know that the funding terrorist groups is something that the U.S. has done. They even redeployed. Actually, maybe I'll start with that one. You shared a video with me where there was a guy talking about how they redeployed a terrorist into Iraq as long as they were going to fight the right people for them. Do you want me to play that video first, and we can talk about that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's play that one.
ثم بعد فترة دخل معتقل أبو وائل، اعتقل من قبل الأمريكان، وعرض عليه من قبل الأمريكان موضوع مهم جدا أثر بعدين في سيرة أبو وائل ومع الأنصار. الموضوع هو الأمريكان طلبوا من أبو وائل أن يغير اتجاه المعركة، يغير اتجاه الصراع، أنه تتحول القتال من قتال الأمريكان إلى قتال التنظيمات الشيعية في العراق الموالية، على قولهم الموالية لإيران. عندها أبو وائل أراد يعني يجمع بين الأمرين، فطلب من الأمريكان الإفراج عنه والإفراج عن مجموعة من القيادات، من قيادات الأنصار داخل السجن. فاستجابوا الأمريكان وأفرجوا عن اثنين، أفرجوا عن أبو مصطفى الكردي واللي كان يعتبر عمود فاعل في جماعة أنصار الإسلام، وأفرجوا عن أبو مقداد العربي. وأبو مقداد رجل هم كان في الهيئة الشرعية لكنه مو بمستوى ولا بمسؤولية ولا بقدرة أبو مصطفى الكردي.
So that is, I mean, obviously we don't need to try too hard to convince people that America supports and deploys terrorists. I mean, even this is an interesting one before we talk about that video in specific, where we had, let me see, obviously Osama bin Laden was once their anti-Soviet warrior who was celebrated by Western media. So supporting and even deploying terrorists is not something surprising. But did you want to say something a little bit about that video before we just move on to the main point?
Yeah, well, that they always do that, like make offers with such groups, like they have like a terrorist group, or not exactly a terrorist, maybe a group target Americans and have some radical ideology. They just made them an offer. We want you to like target Iraqis and like incite civil war in Iraq, and don't target us, and they will like look the other way. It's the problem of the Iraqi government. They will like you will also like you will still find the problems with the Iraqi government. They will target you, but we want to help them. Like exactly what happened with ISIS. ISIS, when ISIS took over and was about to like to take Baghdad, the capital of Iraq, the Iraqi government asked help from United States. United States refused to help the Iraqi government, so they had to go to Iran. So the Iranis went to Iraq and went to fight ISIS. They like Americans were like they are playing by the rules. They don't target us. They only target you, even if you are our allies. But you will just play the game with them. And
Right.
maybe if let's say for example if ISIS took all over Iraq, they can reach a deal with ISIS, or even split Iraq into two countries like Korea or something, and say we are made rules and make such countries a Sunni country and the other countries a Shia country, and this how we solve the problem. I think that's why they killed Soleimani. Soleimani, like he fogged
He
things
was
up.
one of the biggest. He was one of the biggest fighters against ISIS. I mean, he was making a lot of headway with that. And I think one thing is really important to note too is that during these calculations about what groups they're going to support and things like that, human rights does not come into the equation. You know, they know these groups are terrible. I mean, you can see what's happening in Syria now in the areas where these moderate rebels have taken over. You know, I'm killing people for not praying on Fridays, or beheading kids. You know, here's a screenshot. This is a group of that's supported by U.S. and its allies. This is the how do you pronounce that group?
Nuruddin Zinki.
Okay, yeah. I mean, this is what's going on in Syria now. This isn't reaching Western media, mainstream media, but these are the groups that America's supporting. And to tie it back into the point that I want to make, it seems like we're seeing a shift where America's going to do exactly the same thing with ETIM, because they're going to fight who they want. They're going to fight China. And it doesn't matter what kinds of things that they did in Xinjiang. And we can see, you know, when those terrorist groups were operating in Xinjiang, they weren't only killing Han Chinese. They were killing Uyghurs who didn't follow their strict version, their Salafist version of Islam, or however you say it. Or especially if they worked in the government. You were saying that's something that's common in other places too. You know, if you worked in not even the military or something like that, if you worked in the public service for the government or something like that, their ultimate goal is to kill you and your entire family for that sin. If I understood you correctly when you told me about that last time.
Yeah, there is someone who's in ETIM propaganda video. This man, he was calling in their propaganda video to like jihad is obligation in everywhere, not just in Syria, not just against non-Muslim countries. It's obligation against all countries, even
Actually,
Islamic countries.
you know what? Actually, before we continue, there's so many different rabbit holes that are opening up here. That reminds me of a video you shared with me, which showed them calling on Muslims to unite and fight basically against all of these countries. I'll play that video first.
Bu xarlıqdan qutuluşun hal qılğıç amili bolğan cihat ibadeti Allah üstümizge farz qılğan namazga oxşaş farz eyn. Bu ibadatni ado qilayotgan o'g'illarni qo'llab yordam berish ham farz eyn. Dunyodagi sinoq imtihonlardan qo'rqishdan avval Allohning oxiratdagi azobidan qo'rqishimiz kerak. Ajal bekitilib bo'lgan, ilgari kin qilmaydi. O'zimizni ayab ömrimizni uzartolmaymiz. Tevekkül qilib fidokorlik bilan jihad qilish ömrimizni qisqartmaydi. Vaqtni g'animat bilib amal qilgan kishi mangulik oxirat hayotini qo'lga keltirgan baxtli kishidir. Payg'ambar sallallohu alayhi vasallam o'z hadisida bunday degan: "Vafuz min sihhatika limaradik va min hayatika limautik." Saq vaqtingni kasal kelishdan burun, hayot vaqtingni o'lim kelishdan burun g'animat bil.
Okay, it seems like the end of that video isn't translated, but which group is that, and what exactly is going on? Does it tie into what you were just talking about just now?
Well, such of course, they are encouraging people to carry arms and launch jihad against China. Such a group it's not just ETIM about Salafist jihadism, the ideology behind that and the why they are called like that. They believe that jihad is not something you do or in a country or something. They believe it's mandatory in Islam, fasting, like praying. So if you are a Muslim, you have to fight. It's an obligation for you. You don't have like a choice. You can't say I don't I want to join jihad. I want to practice jihad. That's why they are different from other most Muslims. Most Muslims, they know that the obligation of Islam, like praying, fasting, giving zakah, and other obligation. Their groups are care about fighting. I find it people who don't fight are sinners, and people who they may go to hell if they don't fight, or even at least not fight. They can pay money, like they can participate in jihad or support jihadist groups. That's their
D-
mindset.
Does this also in turn justify the killing of people who don't follow along? Because I know that especially some of those groups that contact me from the UK, their circle of friends were talking about Muslims who leave their faith. They deserve to be in a place that would practice Sharia law. They deserve to be executed. They should be executed by the law. Does that tie into the same thing, that you must do this, you must follow our ways, and in turn, if they don't, actually those groups are justified in killing you?
Yeah, it's this is the thing. Like, if you said jihad or armed of or violence isn't Islamic, that mean you are denying a part of religion. According to them, it's like denying fasting or denying praying, which will make you not Muslim. If you go in public and talk to people about peace and tolerant Islam, that make you a target, that you can die for this. They actually did it in multiple countries, in Egypt. I think they killed in Egypt a Sheikh al-Zahabi. I think he was the minister of Awqaf in Egypt. In Syria, they also killed, I think, Sheikh al-Bouti. He was also a moderate imam who taught tolerance and such. So he became a target for them. That's why they consider such imams as not just being not Muslim or apostates. No, they just promote. They are enemies of Islam. Like they go in public and ask people. Like, it's for them, it's the same as asking people not to pray or not to fast and stand against it. That's why they could target imams.
That makes sense, because I have a picture of this. I met with this imam from Kashgar while I was in Xinjiang, and his father was killed by those terrorists in China, in Xinjiang. And he mentioned, and I didn't fully understand, he mentioned that the reason his father was killed was because he stood out against those extremists. He spoke out against them. And so it ties into exactly the same thing you were saying. If you do that, if you talk about moderate Islam, you talk about not taking to arms and things like that, that makes you a target for these groups. And obviously his father, unfortunately, was killed by them. So just I'm jumping around a little bit here, but I want to talk about the propaganda. So the propaganda that's being boosted by Western media fits a lot of the same kind of stuff you were talking about. So we had this come out saying that ASPI estimated that 16,000 mosques in Xinjiang have been destroyed or damaged. And when you actually go behind, you look at the reports, some of them are really, really ridiculous what they're doing. And then they also go on. This is where I really feel like it's a call to action for Muslims, for these extremist groups that these media outlets are deliberately promoting. And this is why you get the very strategic language also that Xinjiang is closer in fabric to Baghdad than Beijing. You know, it seems like they're really trying to promote this call to action that these Salafist groups are doing. And you know what? There's a double bonus here. So obviously America has a benefit to want to destabilize China. You know, they don't want China to overtake the U.S. China's making a lot of headway with third world countries and all of these, you know, with their Belt and Road Initiative. And they've got videos of some of their previous, you know, chiefs of staff and things like that, to Colin Powell, saying that when they want to target China, Xinjiang is exactly the place that they would do that. It makes so much sense. But the double benefit is that when you got ASPI promoting this call to action for Muslims, ASPI is a think tank, you know very well, in Australia that's funded by weapons manufacturers. So if they are successful in creating a holy war, you know, or whatever it is that you want to call it, and the U.S. starts arming these groups, as many times they do, those people who are pushing and promoting this story are going to benefit greatly. I mean, they profit from conflict. So I think that's going on in the back end. But the first step, I think, is, and I don't know if you want to add something to that before I talk about the first step.
Yeah, I just remember something. Not only ISIS praised the ETIM, also ETIM praised the ISIS. Like it's mentioned in their magazine. Like
Oh, that's this one, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So they're praising this article. Yeah.
The first photo or the first screenshot, it's from Islamic Turkestan magazine, issue 5. It in the photo it's Abu Yahya al-Libi, who was Al-Qaeda commander. It's in their magazine. It still exists till today.
Right.
The other screenshot, it's in Islamic Turkestan magazine, issue 7. They are saying about Islamic State. The translation is, it is Islam that make people unite together under its flag. It's a global jihad to liberate the land, every land, to liberate people from slavery to other things than God, that doesn't recognize any borders, that separate Muslim from other Muslim. It is the ideology that doesn't recognize geography or borders. It is the religion and Aqidah. Then they say the Islamic State, its borders today is inside Iraq, but their ambition goes beyond Iraq to unite all Muslims around the world. And they say there is a very big difference between nationalists who only care about their borders or countries and such, and the people who follow Islam and make jihad and sacrifice for God. They are praising ISIS a lot, and the ISIS then were still like ISIS today. Let me tell you this: Al Qaeda before ISIS took over land is more dangerous than after they took land. And maybe if you want, I can explain this from their understanding, if you want.
So can you repeat that? Sorry, the ISIS is more dangerous before they took land, or I didn't quite get that.
Yeah, before they take land, they are more dangerous, especially towards minorities, than after they took land.
Really? So
Yeah.
yeah, I'd be interested in hearing why.
Okay. If you have like ISIS or Al Qaeda, like control half of the land, they don't have full control. In such a case, they believe that non-Muslims don't have insurance on their lives. Their lives, if they died, they died. You can have like freedom on just eradicate non-Muslims. If they don't have land, that's their ideology. So if they have the power, they would be more dangerous than having complete power. The thing about having complete power, that non-Muslims can pay jizya or pay money to stay alive. Like they will Christians and the other minorities will still be in grave danger, but they can at least they can survive. Like if someone of them like betrayed ISIS, maybe ISIS can destroy all of them. But if they paid money to ISIS can let them live. That's how dangerous they are when they are out of powers, out when they don't take land. So
So yeah,
that's why they like blow up churches and blow up mosques that belong to Sunni Muslim Sufis and Shia, because they think these people don't have an insurance on their lives.
that makes makes a lot of sense, because when I was interacting with Arslan Hidayat on Twitter, so it sounds like it would be a kind of like an apartheid system, a violent apartheid system imposed on people. And when Arslan, in some of his videos and in conversations, he was saying when when they take over, when it becomes he's very careful about saying Islamic State or not Islamic State. He wants to appeal to a wider audience. So when he's on Muslim only podcasts that I've listened to, he's a little bit more relaxed when he's saying there is no true Muslim country. There is no true Muslim country practicing Sharia law. So when I interviewed him, I really pressed him on that. He was talking about, he was talking to me about, okay, he wants to have this secular society. And I didn't believe him when he was saying that, because I heard how he spoke in other places. So I kept pushing him on it, even though he kept saying he wanted this, secular democracy. But then later on, in an interview with Carl Zah, he admitted a little bit more clearly what he would do. He said, if non-Uyghurs were staying in Xinjiang, they probably wouldn't have the ability to vote. They wouldn't be allowed to vote. And they would be allowed to stay as long as they bowed down. He used this word, bowed down to the Uyghur authority. And it matches exactly what you're saying. It matches exactly what you're saying these terrorist groups want to accomplish. Now, of course, there's other things he did. I played a video of a terrorist behind a East Turkestan flag saying that he would come back to Xinjiang and kill all the Chinese. And when I asked him about that video, he says, I don't see any problem with that video. And he talked about that, there'd be strict rules if these people stayed, but they would most likely have to leave. They'd be forced to leave, even if by force. And he even included the Mongols, who lived north of the Tian Shan Mountains for longer than the Uyghurs. So everything he says, even though he says he doesn't identify with ETIM, he's not a terrorist, it's exactly what you're talking about. This is what they would want to accomplish in Xinjiang, it seems. Like that's their target for Xinjiang.
Well, if I was him, if I were him, I wouldn't do that. Like it's another time, to be honest. If
He's admitting too early.
If I still adopting the same ideology, it's another time. It's not a good time to say what you want to do. Like, for example, ETIM and Al Qaeda, they always rebrand themselves. They rebrand themselves until they get enough power and they became powerful enough, and they expose themselves, like what happened in Syria. In Syria, Al Qaeda in Syria, they say at first, they say they are Jabhat al-Nusra. They said they aren't related with Al Qaeda and they aren't related with the Islamic State. When they became powerful enough and they got thousands joining them, they said, now we are part of Al Qaeda. And then when they became weak enough, they said, no, we are not affiliated with Al Qaeda. It was part of the past. They always do that. They always.
So Arslan's problem is he's got it half right, his strategy. So he's right in saying, no, we don't, I'm not part of ETIM. I don't support ETIM. But he's admitting too clearly that all of his goals and hopes for Xinjiang match ETIM and these Salafist Islamic groups exactly. I mean, it's exactly the same ideology. So it's almost like a mini rebranding of himself. He's saying, no, I'm not ETIM. I'm Arslan. It just so happens that all of my ideas for Xinjiang are exactly the same as theirs. And so he's not very... his strategy isn't very good. I imagine there's a lot of people who are unhappy with him because he's just showing too many cards too early, as you're saying. But let's talk about what's going on then. So I think there's a few steps that need to happen in order for the U.S. to support and prop up ETIM and to support terrorism against China. So the first part happens somewhat without them. It's the propaganda push. It's the same propaganda that these groups have always used, as you've said, everywhere else. But now this time it's propped up by Western mainstream media. Actually, this might be a good time to play the Iraqi propaganda video, where it's a specific propaganda video against Iraq. And I think it covers a lot of the same stuff that's being reused for Xinjiang. I don't think I played that video yet. So let me play that first.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. أهلا وسهلا أخ عبد الكريم من العراق. تفضل.
تحية لك أخي الفاضل وتحية للشيخ الزغبي محمد
حفظك الله.
اسمحوا لي أنا بصراحة يعني منذ زمن أحاول أن أتصل بكم ولا أستطيع، والآن قدر الله عز وجل. يا إخوة
تفضل.
أنا من بغداد.
نعم.
أناديكم من بغداد، من ذا أصابك يا بغداد بالعين؟ ألست قد كنت يوما قرة العين؟
نعم.
أنا أناديكم من العراق يا خليلي، هل في مصر عين حزينة تبكي على بغداد لعلي أعينها؟ يا شيخ محمد، أنا كنت معتقلا عند آلاف من أهل السنة رجالا ونساء، وحملوني أمانة، قالوا لو نفد من أهل الإسلام من ينصرنا استنجد بروسيا، استنجد بأي إنسان ينقذنا. حملت نساؤنا سفاحا في السجون، قتل أهل السنة ومحمدا ونبيا، حرقت اللحى يا شيخ، وضع في أدبار الشيوخ. طلب مني أن أحكي نكتة على أمي عائشة وعلى أبي بكر، فأبيت فبصقوا في وجهي، فوضع النجاسة على لحيتي. انقذوا أهل السنة ومحمدا ونبيا وإسلاما. حملت نساؤنا سفاح حملت انقذوا أهل السنة، انقذوا أطفال أهل السنة. سحلونا في الشوارع، حرقونا لأنس في عمر وبكر وعثمان وبهادلنا من أصحاب رسول الله ونحن في السجون. قالوا احكي لنا نكتة عن عائشة، قلنا لا، فقطعوا أصابعنا وقلعوا أظافرنا.
I'll end it there because that one's a bit long. But what exactly is going on there? What are they trying to do to? Who are they trying to appeal to? Just give us a little bit of information about how this works as propaganda. What its purpose is.
Yeah, if you continue the video, they are saying also that there is a woman who were raped because she memorized the Quran. They did that because.
So a lot, same kind of thing, rape, all of these kinds of things that are reused again.
Yeah, they play it like they manipulate people. They manipulate their feelings. They want people to say, this could happen to me. Like even when BBC choose people to talk about Xinjiang and what's happening there. Which, if you think about it, like they give her a passport. Like if China or the Chinese authority did this to someone, would they just approve them to travel abroad? It's just stupid. No
Oh
country
yeah,
would do
you're
that.
talking about Tursine. Yeah, she's on the third version of her story. She was granted a passport while she was under arrest. It's like that. What kind of a genocide is this? And they're saying that Uyghurs can't get passports, but apparently this person who was tortured, raped, forcefully sterilized, was given a passport so that she could go out and tell her story. I mean, yeah, we're getting into the ridiculousness of the anti-China propaganda, but that video of Iraq, it was calling on the purpose was to call on the Salafist groups to come in and to be saved by them and to have them take over. Was that the kind of main purpose of that?
Yeah, they want to recruit groups or recruit people from all around the world to go to Iraq, of course, to save Muslims from evil Shia Muslims in Iraq who are enemies of Islam, who make people, force people to shave their beards, who imprison thousands of Sunnis and making ethnic cleansing. This, by the way, this claim about Shia making ethnic cleansing is made also by Al Jazeera.
Oh,
Which
okay. Propped up by them.
there is a video about that. Al Jazeera also promoted ISIS, the founder of ISIS. They say he's like devoted Muslim, and Al Jazeera is very much. I found it now like a propaganda tool of Al Qaeda. It's if you are
Yeah,
Al Qaeda.
so they Al Jazeera went after me also, and you can see that they cut when they were playing my video that went viral. They cut out all of the important bits of my video where I'm saying why it's a BS story, because they want to now, just like they were promoting that genocide story in Iraq, they want to promote the Xinjiang genocide story. They don't actually want real rebuttals against the narrative. They want to prop it up, which was made evident by their video. So it's kind of interesting. You should say that they're doing this again now for Xinjiang. So there's a few elements here, and let me get your opinion on what you think of how I'm thinking this through. So first of all, make the propaganda against China. Say that all of these atrocities are going on. Now the Western media is propping it up as well, which acts as a call to action for Salafist groups or even potential propaganda to recruit non-Salafist kind of Muslims into that ideology to fight against China. The benefit to the U.S. is to destabilize China. The benefit to ASPI and those groups who are sponsored by weapons manufacturers is that they will create conflicts, which will then create areas where their weapons can be sold to or funneled through. Then the obvious step, which has already been done, was delisting ETIM as a terrorist organization, which almost gives everybody a blessing from the U.S. to say, okay, yeah, you know what, you can do your fundraising, you can do your recruiting. It takes away a possible deterrent from people saying, I don't want to associate with ETIM because they're on a terrorist list by the U.S., and the U.S. is one of the biggest terrorist organizations. I don't want to be persecuted by them. But now America said, it's okay, go ahead, it's okay. ETIM can continue. Then the next step is to start to whitewash ETIM and to make it seem like they're the next darling moderate rebels, just like they did in Syria, despite the fact that I showed you the picture of them beheading children and doing all of this stuff. And that happens in various ways. There was a book that came out it wasn't too far off from when ETIM was delisted as a terrorist organization, called The War on Uyghurs. And it was really interesting. I read through it. They went through pages and pages of saying how terrible it is in China that Uyghur kids are learning Mandarin Chinese. Then, this is a really interesting part. They talk about showing while TIP videos suggest that the schools also train students in the use of weapons and the art of warfare. There's no evidence that TIP operations use child soldiers. Furthermore, TIP videos also highlight the communal nature for life of Uyghurs in Syria, showing holiday celebrations and other community gatherings in addition to the battles in which men are involved. this was like, I was blown away by this. They were talking about how terrible it is that Chinese, Uyghur kids in China are forced to learn Mandarin. And then he goes on to whitewash the fact that kids are being trained with weapons by ISIS in Syria by saying, well, you know what, they have really nice holiday parties as well. So I asked him about it. I asked him, Sean, about it, and he never replied to me. He replied to people who replied to me saying that they're in a bubble and they're getting their information from I can't remember where it was. And I said, I'm not in a bubble. I read your book. I read through it. I'm asking you a question now. You know, how do you, I can't remember the exact question I asked him, but never got a reply from him. So we're partway through this process. Propaganda against China to create a rally call for Salafist groups. Delisting organizations from the terrorist list to give them a blessing to grow, to fundraise, to recruit. Whitewashing those groups to eventually prepare to sell them to the world as these freedom fighters, these peaceful freedom fighters. And then the last step, which probably is already going on, but if it's not, it should happen soon, where there's an active support for these terrorist groups to fight against China from the US or from their allies or from their think tanks or however it's going to happen. What do you think of my assessment of the situation? And do you think that's what's happening before our eyes?
Yeah, it's United States are treating with this like terrorist groups is like when they say that the most victims of terrorism are Muslims, like this what United States do, like they give you more freedom when you don't attack them. Like if you only attack Muslims and don't target United States, we will just look the other way. If you target our enemies, maybe even we fund you, give you direction. Like that something that is really strange. The first leader of ISIS, or the founder of ISIS, he got out of being caught like over and over again, like it was 10 times. Then when I was with them, they were saying it was God who protected him. Like some accident, he was like monitored by a plane, like a spy plane, seeing him going towards like a checkpoint, and somehow he turned over and went back without being caught. They just let him. The most leader of ISIS were being imprisoned under United States custody, and they let them go. They don't, by the way, they don't just let them go, and even in Guantanamo, which bring a question that I would really like to ask Rushan about it. Rushan worked like since 2003 till 2013, right? Yeah,
Somewhere around there, yeah. As a translator in Guantanamo Bay for the Uyghur prisoners.
yeah. The question I would like to ask, if they like arrested a Uyghur who like they thought his like committing terrorist acts in 2003, they will let them stay in prison like for 10 years until she came and asked them, do you have anything to do with Bin Laden? And he said no, and they just let them go, like now you can go. I really don't think that. I think what happened is like a deal or something. We can let you go, we can release all your prisoners, we just want you to attack the right targets. Maybe Syrians, maybe Chinese. Do it, and we'll just release your prisoners. You don't have to attack us.
You know what's really interesting about that is there was a Al Jazeera documentary on this topic, and they let they interviewed those Uyghurs who were in Guantanamo Bay, and they specifically said that they kept telling the Americans what they were doing was they're saying, you are not our enemy. Our enemy is the same enemy. You know, our enemy is China. And so they admitted to saying that they have an enemy, they have a target, China, and they were let go eventually. They were released. For sure, yeah. If America was their target or any of America's allies, no, they wouldn't have been let out. But because they said, and they emphasized that point, they were let go. Al Jazeera took that documentary down. We have archived copies of it, and I played some clips of it in my follow-up interview after I interviewed Rushan Abbas. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like they want these people, they want these terrorists, as long as they're going to be going after the right people. Very important assets. Yeah. Well, actually, speaking of assets, this is, there was an article. I don't have the author's name here. I should post the original article in the description after, but that reminds me of what he says. He says, Islamic terrorists are wonderful instruments for proxy wars. They cost very little, but they fight fearlessly. They are a global resource that can be brought into any local conflict. They are also expendable. We use them when convenient and kill them when inconvenient. And then they go into listing. There was actually over 20 examples, but 10 here, talking about admitting that they're using these terrorist forces against their targets. Yeah, and then it goes on towards the end, talking about moving on. The biggest challenge is going to be for is China, talking about how Xinjiang is predominantly made up of Muslims with help from Turkey. They've already created Islamist movement calling for independence and separation, and talking about the one road, one belt. These guys are going to be absolutely used against China. And then I missed out on this too. Somebody had brought this to my attention too. I think this goes back to the same book I was talking about earlier, how, they're just trying to paint these guys, these people who are leaving Xinjiang to train with AK-47s as just migrant workers who just happen to be playing with AK-47s. I mean, for me, it seems like the writing is on the wall, that this is what's going to happen. And now you've been sharing a bunch of new videos with me that doesn't really make it to the public, which is showing ETIM, now that they've been delisted, they're doing a huge recruitment push now, an international recruitment push. They've got new videos coming out, all kinds of stuff. That's what you're seeing from within these groups, right? That there is a recruitment campaign going on.
Yeah, I think they have people like from England. Not only that, they now like safe haven to ISIS or former ISIS fighters, Al-Qaeda. Anyone can join them and stay in their territories or areas they control, and they will be safe, that no one will bomb them. So yeah, they are the next Al-Qaeda or the next ISIS, and they are preparing for battle, and it should be very clear.
Yeah, I mean, this is what the U.S. did in the last Cold War as well, right? They armed, or they supported the Mujahideen to fight against the Soviets. I mean, they're just dusting off their old playbook. The ingredients are a little bit different, but the concept, the general framework is the same. How about I share that video? You found a new ETIM propaganda recruitment video where they're training with guns, and they make it look really exciting and everything like that. Let's play that one. I'll end it there. But wow, like with the dramatic music, they really make themselves out to look and feel like heroes, and the filming quality. So this was ETIM. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this video? Is this ISIS or this is a specific ETIM video?
Yes, ETIM, not ISIS. They are they support now. They support Al Qaeda, and Al Qaeda supports them. They are like the same. They are Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda was. It's not. By the way, it's not weird to have people who are Al Qaeda with single entity or ethnicity, and have their own group and their own name. Like it happened a lot. Like in Somalia, you have Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab is a group of Al-Qaeda. I think in Libya, they have Ansar Sharia. And even in Iraq, there were a Kurdish group, which was the original group that the founder of ISIS was part from. It's a Kurdish group, have the same ideology for Qaeda, called Ansar Islam or Ansar Sunnah. You also have the Islamic Uzbekistan, I think, movement. It later joined ISIS. They have their own group. So you don't have to have the name of Al Qaeda to be part of Al Qaeda. You can have your own ethnicity and have a different name. It's not
Right.
like a new thing or different thing.
And I mean, the propaganda video that they did there, I mean, it's really well put together and edited. I mean, it reminds me of I saw one video a long time ago that really shook me for many days. I think it was ISIS. You might remember this and could tell me if you do. It was of them lighting a Jordanian pilot on fire. They put him in a cage, put gasoline over him, and then put a fuse, made a trail of gasoline and lit it. And basically, it was a video of him being burnt alive. And the angles, the music, the production, it was done like a Hollywood film. I don't know. Do you remember that video?
Yeah, you know it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's ISIS. ISIS.
ISIS, yeah. And this video, I mean, when you look at the production quality, they really are upping their propaganda campaign to really try to recruit people, and they've got a lot of capable people on their team. It seems like.
Well, for me, I find that their propaganda and how they evolved, it's like normal. Like they trained me on how to edit videos. Even the first lesson they gave me, it was how to make waving flag. The waving flag in some ISIS propaganda videos or Al Qaeda propaganda videos, they have a flag waving. This was the first lesson they gave to me, and I was also in a private group of religious group who studied fiqh group and the teaching of Ibn Taymiyyah, Abu Qudama, and Abu Nur al-Maqdisi, who were some Salafist scholars. Abu Nur al-Maqdisi is the one in Gaza. So I don't find it weird. They pay attention to details in videos. It's not like they're not amateurs. They even when they make videos about like I said, in their operations of people who made side operations, they choose people doing some normal things. They make them laughing, playing with each other, fighting each other, to make them relate to you, to think they are targeting you. And especially they want to make videos of young people who do such things because they want to recruit young people. Their target would be teenagers, not not adult people. They want teenagers. So like if you have a teenager and you train them for a year or several years, when they like join them, they will be like perfect fighters, and they will like have the ideology without any other distraction.
Right.
And
They've been indoctrinated from when they were a kid. That reminds me, I think you were telling me there was even an 18-year-old Syrian member of Al Qaeda who planned a chemical attack on Jordan to kill quite a lot of people as well. He must have been trained for quite a while.
yeah, the Jordanian authorities said the attack would kill or injure 70,000 people. It was 2004, which
Wow.
like when Syrians, by the way, Syrians about chemical attacks, don't people who talk about Syrian chemical attacks don't know that Al Qaeda have chemical weapons in 2004 and actually made such attack, and it was against Muslims too. Why people think Al Qaeda wouldn't do that? Not only that, Al Qaeda in I think 2008 they called the people who have nuclear weapons to bring it to Iraq to use it in Iraq. Nuclear weapons.
Wow.
Like they think Al Qaeda like some like nice thing or some nice people you can have reason with. No, they are horrible. And
Yeah.
like ETIM itself, I think when they fought the Pakistani army in Waziristan, I think they displaced millions of people, millions of Pakistanis. They also were Muslims, and they killed, of course, thousands there. Millions of people were displaced when
Yeah.
ETIM was fighting the Pakistani army.
Yeah, I think people need to understand too, like those terrorist attacks in Xinjiang also, they were not targeted at Han Chinese, they were targeted at Uyghurs as well, especially Uyghurs who didn't follow the ideology very closely. And people don't think about that, like what they were liberated from by getting rid of these kinds of groups. And I think what people need to realize too is because I hope, the people who watch this and pay attention to this are going to be alert for when the U.S. starts supporting ETIM or an offshoot of ETIM if ETIM happens to rebrand in the same kinds of ways that you said Al Qaeda did in certain places. These are not friendly groups. They're not your friends. I mean, you look at some of the terrorists that were funded to fight in Libya, who were supported by the West. They came back and attacked the West after as well. I think it was one of the bombings or the Ariana Grande concert or something like that. It was actually one of the people they funded to fight in Libya or supported to fight in Libya. Like, these people are not your friends. I think that's kind of important for people to understand as well. But I want to move the conversation to the last section to focus a little bit more on China and the Xinjiang situation, because with this in mind and understanding how children are prepped from a very, very young age, actually, do you mind? I know you don't like this video. You think it's very disturbing, but I think it's important for people to understand. Do you mind if I play that video of the kids being trained by ISIS?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, all right. Let's do that. I know you don't like this video.
The video also featured young Uyghur school children shouting threats to the Chinese government.
Yaşlanğan gözler, boğulğan sözler, İzzətdə bugün qəmlənən yüzlər. Yaşlanğan gözlər, boğulğan sözlər, İzzətdə bugün qəmlənən yüzlər. Hər yerdə təkbir, olğaçqa səbir, titrəməkdə tağut.
هنا نحيا بين أهلنا وإخواننا من المهاجرين والأنصار.
Okay, I'll stop the video there. But I would imagine that it's really difficult to deprogram kids who were, brought up like that. Like, their whole childhood, they were being prepared to fight for these kinds of values, their interpretation of Islam, or however it is you want to call it. So before we start talking about how China handled it, I wonder what do you do in Egypt if you have kids who are brainwashed and now they're like a terrorist, they're ready to be a full-on terrorist, or people who are caught associating with these groups or being, aligned with these groups? What is it that Egypt does? Are there any de-radicalization programs or skills training or whatever it is? Like, what's the situation in Egypt? How do you handle how do you handle this problem?
Well, I don't know about kids, but I know about what happened to people who engage in such groups. Like, I think kids, it's a problem of the family. They let them to the family to take care of them. But when, like, I will tell you something. When people went to Afghanistan in 80s and to fight the Soviet Union and join jihad in Afghanistan, when the people, they were even sent, they were encouraged by the government to go there. They even released some people from prisons, including the current leader of Al-Qaeda, was released from the Egyptian prison and was sent to Afghanistan. When they came back to Egypt, they went straight to prisons. Just they stayed in prison from 90s or 91 and such, and till 2011. And even they came out, and during when the Muslim Brotherhood took power, and when the Muslim Brotherhood were overthrown, they went back to prison. Even if you repented inside prison, there is a huge chance that you want to go out again. It's a problem. Like, it's okay if you have the idea itself and just let go of it and live your life. But if you were caught and convicted of being jihadist, it's very bad. It's your whole life is destroyed, even if you were encouraged in some time by the government. It's the end of you.
Right.
So
right.
There is no
so
education.
There's no vocational training, no ways to integrate them back into society or anything like that.
No, it's just your first mistake is your last.
Okay. That's interesting. So there are other Muslim countries that do have these programs. And so before we start talking about China's ones, I want to play a few videos. So there's one, I'll play the Saudi one first. Let me play that here.
Rehabilitation for terrorists. That's what Saudi Arabia is doing with captured militants, but the results are mixed. Holly Williams talked to a former al-Qaeda member at this reform center. She's in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Holly, good morning.
Good morning. Saudi Arabia is a fertile recruiting ground for both al-Qaeda and ISIS. We visited a facility here in Saudi Arabia where they're rehabilitating convicted terrorists.
They have instructor
with swimming pools, a gym and comfortable rooms. Saudi Arabia's terrorist reform center looks like a hotel.
In art therapy classes.
Its inmates take courses in positive thinking and do art as therapy.
This is a painting of Guantanamo.
They've all recently served jail time for terrorist offences and aren't allowed to appear on camera. But Colonel Omar Al-Zalal gave us a tour of the campus.
It's quite luxurious.
Well, you know, we are Muslim. We believe in human rights. I mean, they're not animals overall.
The inmates get free healthcare, a monthly allowance and conjugal visits. And if they pass their exams, there are more financial incentives, like government scholarships and even help paying for their weddings. Over lunch, we met Abdul Rahman Al-Hawaiti, a star graduate who's now studying engineering.
Al-Qaeda?
Yeah, there's Al-Qaeda.
He told us he joined Al-Qaeda because he was angered by the US invasion of Iraq.
I'm an infidel. If you had met me at that point, would you have tried to kill me?
Of course.
You would have tried to kill me.
I would have killed you, he said, but now I see that you and I can live together in peace.
Those who don't reform in 3 months are sent back to prison, and the Saudis claim they have a success rate of over 80%.
All right, so that was Saudi Arabia. So obviously, it's very different from the situation in China. I don't know how you become a convicted terrorist. What the kind of thresholds were for that. You know, in England, it's the same thing. You know, there was an ex-police officer who was caught with banned extremist material, and he just went to prison as well. So in Xinjiang, it's important to make a distinction. The people who were going through the training centers were not convicted terrorists. Many of them were just exposed to extremist materials or things like that. So I know it's not exactly the same parallel. There are other places that focus more on a general, you know, for example, in Indonesia, there's a center for kids, children of terrorists. So they themselves are not convicted terrorists, but they go through these programs, similar kinds of things, art, therapy, all this stuff to make sure that they're what they called, Vice did a documentary on them and said deprogramming. The way they covered that versus how they covered the programs in Xinjiang was very different. They made it seem very kind of romantic. I've got one more here of Pakistan. So let's see what they do in Pakistan.
This is a remote school in the Malakand district of the tribal areas in Pakistan, just outside the beautiful valley of Swat. But this is a school for very special children. In most ways, they are like their peers anywhere in the world. However, there is a difference between these children and those in other schools. They are closely watched and must remain within the walls of the school. And most of them expected to die before adulthood.
They said, come for training with us, but doing a suicide attack, you will go straight to heaven.
Until recently, these boys were fighting for the Taliban movement of Pakistan.
Most of these children actually used to walk through Mingora and other major towns of Swat, and each town square used to have 1 or 2 beheaded bodies every day.
What do we do with a mind that has been exposed to violence, or a mind that has indulged in violence without thinking what are the consequences?
There is no other school like this in the world.
All right, so that is a little bit more closer, but still not equivalent. Talking about minds that have been exposed to violence. One of my followers from Bangladesh was talking about when these extremist ideas spread through a society, it spreads really, really quickly. And they've got examples of it where, you know, what happens when you don't kind of nip this in the bud and stop it from expanding. So people who had their minds exposed to these ideologies, just as they said in the previous video, who were caught with extremist materials, who were aligned with these groups, went through vocational training. Now, it's not the same, you know, they went home on the weekends and stuff like that. I spoke to somebody who graduated from one. They could take leave whenever they wanted if their family had issues and stuff like that. But undoubtedly, I have a feeling that a lot of people were caught up in the system that maybe didn't really deserve to be there or shouldn't be there. But so I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on the whole system. You know, China's approach. I don't expect anybody to, even who thinks it was a good approach, would think that it's perfect. But just what are your general thoughts about how China attacked the situation and focused on the poverty alleviation aspect also, which I think is an important component that we can talk about a little bit later.
Yeah, first of all, like the segment about Pakistan, they were talking about Swat or Swat tribal areas. You know, guess where was the main headquarters of ETIM for Syria?
Was it there?
Yeah. But
Okay,
somehow they were like workers. They went there to like work with Al Qaeda and some sophisticated stuff. doesn't
Right.
has nothing to
Put
do
two,
with
put
extremes.
yeah, put two and two together, right? Yeah. So, with that in mind, with China's approach, from what you understand about it, because you've cut through a lot of the propaganda, you know, you're a little bit more clear-minded about what parts are over-exaggerated, what parts are unfounded claims, all of these things. So, when you cut through all of that, what are your thoughts on how China approached the situation?
I think the most important thing China is doing is about economy and providing people with jobs and the training. It's like every place where Al Qaeda was active, it was mainly in countries having economic problems. People were out of jobs, and I can't talk about Iraq and how they exploited the situation to their advantages, and how the war was like a perfect for them to start to recruit people, and it was like horribly fast. It's like it's not even a coincidence. It's a plan. It's something they plan to do. So this is the most important thing. The thing about education, like it take a lot of time and it take a lot of effort to like rehabilitate or de-radicalize people. It's not easy. Like I went through that, but I stayed with them and was convinced with their ideology for a long time. It took me a lot of efforts. I was like, I believed there's their ideology, read their books, even. The people who are now ETIM take are as their leader and their people who bought their theory. I read such books. It took a lot of efforts. Not everyone is qualified to de-radicalize people, even if some people are professors and Islamic studies. Like it's very complicated, but I hope they succeed in that, and I hope they succeed in de-radicalizing people, because it will be horrible if Xinjiang became like Syria or Iraq. Uh, you can't go back. If this happened, you can't go back. You can't go back in time.
So do you think that in that regard, it was really important for China to act swiftly to really cut this off, even considering that maybe some people, because this was, I know this isn't what you said to me, but there were other Muslim followers who reached out to me and said, you don't understand what happens when this spreads. You know, you're you know, I'm not looking at the full picture. So do you think that even, you know, if some people got caught up in this that shouldn't have been caught up in it, it was important to at least make this effort? Of course, we can always say that we should find ways to do things better, but you generally you think that they did the right thing to put a lot of effort into this, or what's your feelings around that?
Okay, let me tell you like what happened in Syria, like before like what they call revolution or whatever happened before the events in 2011. Like I lived through that. I know exactly how Syria handled the situation, how Syria or the Syrian government took the situation of extremism in Syria. They thought like these groups or these radical jihadist groups, they existed in Syria, by the way, before 2011. They thought these groups wouldn't, they don't do anything. Like maybe they recruit people, they make people adopt the jihadist groups. Maybe they go join Al Qaeda or Islamic State in Iraq, but they don't do anything. They never do any attack against Syria. That's how Al Qaeda was planning. Do you know, like when Al Qaeda started to plan or think Syria will be their next target?
After, I'm guessing after U.S. Interest and involvement in the region, but
like we know that we knew that Syria is a target in 2006. We then we
A target
knew that
from who? From the U.S.
Al-Qaeda.
Oh, okay.
Al-Qaeda.
Oh,
We
okay.
don't
So
we don't think we are US. Like we didn't think that Al-Qaeda is US or controlled by US. It
oh
was
no.
Al-Qaeda.
I was thinking that because they knew that Syria was going to be an area that the U.S. was going to try to destabilize, that it created an opportunity for them. That was my guess. So I don't know if I was wrong, but you can explain. Yeah, what exactly happened there?
Al-Qaeda, like they were saying that they want like United States to be weakened by going through multiple wars. Even Al-Qaeda was in their videos and their records. They were saying, "Go attack Iran." They want to like weaken United States, so the pressure on Al-Qaeda be less. The war, the Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and what they were doing, they were saying that target to like relieve the pressure under the main Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. That's what they think. But the plans or the idea, at least, of attacking Syria or make Syria a new Iraq, it started in 2006. That at least that's how I know it. And by the way, in 2004, United States put sanctions on Syria. 2006, we knew that Al-Qaeda have plans in Syria and do something. So if you see it, it makes sense because Syria, many Syrians, people who lived in Syria, went to join Al-Qaeda in Iraq. They tell Iraqis or tell Al-Qaeda in Iraq how things are in Syria, how things are inside Syria, how much people or how people, if people support Al-Qaeda in Syria or not. Is this land is suitable to start a jihad or something or not? So they know it's people who travel to join jihadist groups. It works like intelligence agency. They collect information, know about situation. They know if we send some group where they will stay, which will be the safest place to stay in. They know the weakness of the country. So Syria didn't care. Like they knew that some groups in Syria like hate Shia and wanted to kill them and wanted to overthrow the government, but they thought that they would never attack the Syrian government. The same way as Libya, by the way. Libya like tolerated such groups. So in 2011, it was too late in Syria. It would happen. They can't. Nothing the Syrian government would do to stop it. It's too late. 2011, it was too late for them to control things. Many people, a lot of people were
radicalized.
Yeah, and they can't do anything now. There is a fight. There is a civil war. They can't try now to tell them that Shia are Muslims and your brother and such. There is a misunderstanding. They didn't care about that. They thought it's all about Iraq. It's all about a war in another country and have nothing to do with us. What Syrians were doing, like they get people from such groups, they interrogate them, they tell them you shouldn't do that. It's recorded. It's like people who are make confessions on Iraqi TV. They say that people who travel to Syria to Iraq, the Syrian government take such people and tell them don't do that, don't join such groups. You are destroying your future, and just imprison them for 4 months or something and let them go. So they have a lot of freedom to organize and to put a plan on targeting Syria. So when things blew up in Syria, there was thousands of people, even tens of thousands of people who are already radicalized, know the weakness of the Syrian army, and attack the Syrian army.
So do you, so to tie this back into the original point, if the Syrian government took more of an approach that like China did, instead of just imprisoning people for a few months and then saying, okay, I hope you learned your lesson, that perhaps their country could have been saved and it wouldn't have descended into the chaos that we're seeing now.
Yeah, very much. Like we do that in Egypt. We like Egypt. I know in Egypt we didn't also face them hard enough. I know someone, the one who contacted me. He was telling me he will join Al Qaeda. He told me he was imprisoned, but when he told them that he doesn't want to do anything in Egypt, they let him go, and he was trained after that in Suez. Suez, by the way, in Sinai. Sinai is the place that ISIS wanted to separate. So it became a problem in Egypt too. Such jihadist groups became to work inside Egypt too. So when China is doing that, it's it's saving a lot of people in the future, not just now. You can't have people who want to start ethnic war and make people fight over religion or over ethnicity. You can't say you support Muslims and support that. You can make it. People who think about that think it will be some game that they will play with a team and encourage the other team and such. It is not about that. People will die. People from both sides, not just China, not just Han Chinese, not Uyghur Chinese. Both sides would die. Both sides will suffer. And what's the point?
Right. So there may have been some short-term restrictions on freedoms and, a little bit intrusive. Well, a little bit might be an understatement in some of the cases, but it's important to look at the bigger picture, because if they hadn't done that, it would have just become another Syria or another Libya. And then if they did actually reach independence or they broke off into East Turkestan, it would be even more of a mess. And then, of course, the U.S. would be coming in and looking at those resources, just like they have control of the resources in Syria right now. It just would have descended into chaos, it sounds like, if I've summarized your position correctly, if China didn't take those kinds of swift measures.
I hope it's not too late. I know China, the leader of ETIM, he was non-jihadist in China. They imprisoned him for don't know how much, a couple, maybe months or a couple of years, and they just released him, and he wanted to Afghanistan to establish his group. If China made such steps early, maybe thousands of people outside China will be saved. Better late than never.
So that's actually an interesting point, because by doing this, it's not only about saving people in Xinjiang and in China, and whether they're Han Chinese, Uyghurs, or anybody else who's caught up in this kind of a civil war, but by letting these people become radicalized and then sending them out, they're actually raining terror down on people in other countries. As we know, there are 10,000 fighters from Xinjiang fighting in Syria. So this is not only about saving lives in Xinjiang, it's actually across a broader range of area, a broader region.
Yeah, and also they make plans for China. When people travel outside China, they give information. They tell them if the situation is suitable or not, what target they should attack, and many things like they did in Syria. People who want Iraq from Syria, they point or give Al Qaeda a lot of information, or target to be attacked, cities to be taken, neighborhood to stay in, and a lot of information that hurted Syria later.
Right. Yeah. Well, what's also interesting for me too, because a lot of people have the question about what was the underlying issue with Uyghurs to begin with that put them in a situation to become easy targets for these extremists. So there's so many different elements. Obviously, the poverty element was one of them, which is why that was a main focus. Which actually, I'll take a sidestep for a second. which is probably why the U.S. is trying so hard to sanction as many products as Xinjiang as possible. Even the World Bank did a study showing that in an environment of poverty or lack of opportunity, it is extremely ripe. It's extremely easy to turn people towards extremism or terrorism. So that's going to be one thing that the U.S. knows exactly what they're doing. That's what these sanctions are about trying to re-encourage this civil unrest. So that's one of those other ingredients and steps that I said is happening that I didn't include in the original part. But, because with Iraq, the reason that people were turned to these groups is a little bit more easy. I mean, there was something to be really infuriated about. Once you get to Syria, it becomes a little bit more secondary. These people were radicalized to fight on behalf of these other people, maybe along religious lines and things like that. But in Xinjiang, you have an additional element that can be exploited, which is the lines of ethnicity that you mentioned, because this is also a playbook from the U.S. and many other countries. They did it in my mother's country of Guyana as well, too, where they wanted to overthrow the government, and they created ethnic divides and riots, race riots between the people of African descent and Indian descent. So with Uyghur groups, you can do the same thing, saying you don't belong with Han Chinese. And this is why they probably emphasize also, oh my goodness, Uyghurs are learning Han Chinese, or they're living alongside these, non-Muslim Han Chinese. It seems like these are the things that were exploited to turn people to this ideology. Now, however, when I talk about this issue, and maybe you got the sense of this, I was speaking in a way where China has won this battle in Xinjiang. But one distinction I noticed with your position is when you're talking to me, it seems like you're more on the side that this battle is far from over and that there are people still operating. Obviously, ETIM is still recruiting and everything like that, but this is something that China needs to be very, very vigilant against, it seems like, still.
Yeah, and one other point I want to talk about, when like ISIS and Al-Qaeda attack, for example, in Egypt, they tried to do similar thing, like they blew up churches and suicide attack. Such attacks, it was target one thing. They wanted Christians to attack Muslims. They wanted to a reaction against Muslims in Egypt. That's how they work. That's the perfect environment for them to make a civil war between sectarian war or religious war between different groups. And they can work on that. They can put themselves as the savior of Muslims, who are saving Muslims, who are like Christian attacked you. We will attack them, and they will take revenge for you. Same thing happened with Shia. With China, yeah. If there is a problem with ethnic problems in China, they can exploit that. They can target Han Chinese, expecting Han Chinese to attack Uyghur Chinese, even if it was attack based on anger, and show it as evil Han Chinese attacking Uyghur. So we will take revenge from Han Chinese again, and they will put you in a circle of blood. And the longer this circle of blood take, the more people join them, the more people radicalize against whether it's ethnic group or religious group. And then I don't know what happened in Iraq. I don't know how to be fixed today. Can the country go back as it was before 2003? It's very hard. You can make it look. You can make take some action early and save the country. But the more you wait, the more you fail to stop such sectarian war, the hard it gets.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's valuable perspective for everybody to think about. There are certain aspects of how the program was deployed that still brings me discomfort. But I think it's important to take into consideration this context, especially from your position, who knows very, very well about how these groups operate, what the risks are, how quickly it can spread. And once it's spread, how difficult to fix it after the fact if you've waited too long. So I know we've been going on for over 2 hours though, and I'm sure we can have future conversations as well. And we're going to continue our conversations in private.
Yeah, we didn't talk about sanctions. How?
Oh, so let's finish on that then. Let's finish on that then as a last piece, because this is actually, you're right. This is going to be the next really big thing that we're going to expect to see more and more sanctions coming. Well, we've got the cotton products, we've got the solar panels now, we've got tomatoes. Australia is trying to push for a complete ban on all Xinjiang products. They know I'm pretty sure they know exactly what they're going to do. So do you want to wrap up on that as the final note?
Yeah, I have first I have to talk about how sanctions it would make me talk about what happened in Iraq. Like when such terrorist groups, like when they attack a state, even like Islamic countries like Egypt, such groups don't target, like if they have 1,000 members, they don't expect that they can defeat 100,000 from the army. So they bought a strategy. Such strategy, it's about bleeding the countries out to destroy their economy. Like in Egypt, they target tourism, so because it gives
That's
Egypt
a big industry.
Yeah, in Egypt, they did the same thing in Pakistan. So the economy is the most important thing. What United States is doing for them like half of the job. Like
for the terrorists,
they can do in a year what they can't do in a decade.
Right.
Like
right.
They are helping them a lot. Like
right. They're just you said that the U.S. even actually directly admitted that they know that Al Qaeda's recruitment ability went up incredibly, an incredible amount after they destabilized the country. And then I guess there's the additional element in Iraq where there were a lot of security forces that were out of work. And then so all of a sudden, when you have impoverished security workers who are already battlefield trained, that must have been a dream come true for Al Qaeda.
Yeah, even the Abu Omar al-Baghdadi, who was a leader of ISIS, he was a former cop. He was working as a cop before the United States. They just make him lose his job. He didn't. Former cops, they can't work. They made a law that prevent people who were like from the army and such to work again under the new government. So by time he joined such radical groups, and then he was radicalized to be the leader of ISIS. Sanctions can do a lot, like a lot for. It's a dream for any terrorist groups, to be honest. You can, for example, you can, like Al Qaeda at first in Iraq, they didn't use people who believe in Al Qaeda ideology. They get people like go to clubs or cafe or something, and they find someone complaining, saying he lost his job, he doesn't know what to do, he need like to money for his children, and tell him what about doing this, and he do it, and they give him money, and they adopt the attack later.
Right.
Many, even in the Soviet Union, many former Soviet Union army soldiers they joined jihadist group after the fall of the Soviet Union. Like
right. Okay.
many of them, like you can do a lot of things. For example, another thing you can do. Do you know many Shia, many attacks in parts of like in sacred places for Shia? These attacks were made by Shia, not made by people against their people. They are, because they can like go through the checkpoints without being suspicious. People, the government wouldn't think like someone will target his own people, so they can make such attacks, put a car or something, and just blow it and get the money. That one of the things that they did in Iraq. You can also bribe. You can also bribe officials by sanctions. You can bribe them to like cooperate with the terrorist groups. And
you put a chokehold on them, and then they're willing to do anything for you to release, to loosen up a bit. So that is exactly what I mean. If the economy in Xinjiang is strong, if everybody has a job, if everybody's productive, it'll be almost impossible to recruit anybody from an environment like that. So these sanctions, as you said, are a dream come true for these extremist groups. And I suspect, and I'm sure you do too, that the U.S. knows exactly what they're doing with those sanctions.
Yeah, there is another dirty trick that Al-Qaeda was doing. Like there was like some Sunnis who joined the army, who joined the Iraqi army. They wanted all Sunnis not to join the army, not to participate with the government. So sometimes they can make Shia attack Sunnis or even kill Sunni soldiers or officers, and say, look, you refused us, and joined them, and they killed you, to make sectarian fight, to make all Sunnis join them. You can do the same thing with ethnicities and with religious. If you want a religious war, you can pay for someone who is your enemy to like attack someone who's from your group, to start such war. Like there is like something weird, like in Syria, for example, when ISIS and Al-Qaeda fought each other, there was attack made by Al-Qaeda against like a son of a tribal leader or something in Syria, and then they accuse ISIS of doing it to make that tribal leader join Al-Qaeda or support Al-Qaeda against ISIS. ISIS was doing the same thing, so they kill their children to make them in their side. That's how dirty these people think, and all of this, they have religious justification for attacking innocent people, even if they don't deserve to die. They have religious justification for that. So you can do anything you can do
to find divides.
It will be very easy.
Yeah, I think they're going to probably focus. My guess would be somewhat on religion in Xinjiang, but a lot of the people, especially the younger generation in Xinjiang, they're not very, very religious. They still follow the general kind of principles culturally. They don't eat pork, they'll fast during Eid, but they're not like, going to pray every Friday and things like that. So I think probably the biggest vulnerability will be the ethnic divides, trying to create it based on, Han versus Uyghur or any of the other ethnic minority groups. That would be my guess. But then you can recruit them into the religious ideology to fight based on that initial underlying kind of
worked in
tension.
Iraq and worked in Syria. Syrians and Iraqis, most of them weren't like that. Most Iraqis weren't sectarians. Many of them still aren't sectarians, but before 2003, like they didn't care about that. They didn't care if you are from a different sect. But these groups know how to make such thing happen. That's
divide and conquer.
Yeah.
And what's
them a lot.
It's what's interesting is what happened in Hong Kong was actually kind of similar too, where they tried to create this divide between Cantonese, Hong Kong natives and mainland Chinese, and you saw the publications of different magazines and stuff like that putting out content calling mainlanders locusts and things like that, and you really did have mainland Chinese getting beat up in the streets in Hong Kong. And it was coming from these news outlets owned by people who had very, very close connections with the U.S. government and, Bolton and all of these kinds of characters. So I think definitely that's one of the things to look out for. So with that, as I mentioned before, we'll wrap it up on this note. And there's a lot of things for people to look out for, which we are predicting now, which is more support or whitewashing ETIM or a future offshoot of ETIM. Look for more sanctions coming, knowing exactly what those sanctions are meant to do. Look for different divides that are trying to be created in society in Xinjiang, and that is being propped up by Western media. These are all things, hopefully, if you listen to this whole conversation, that people are going to have a better understanding of what's going on behind it. What's the actual mechanics behind it all. But I know it's very late there for you, so I really, really appreciate you staying on with me for well over 2 hours. And as I mentioned earlier, we can get together again as more developments happen. So I really appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah, it was nice to talk to you.
It was really great, really great. Thanks again so much. And I hope everybody enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.